I'm in the garden of Paul Sanford in Portland, Oregon here.
Welcome, Darlene.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Very good. I love your garden.
Thank you. We do too. We've helped a lot of patients over the years with medical marijuana in the state of Oregon. I've been able to grow and give away about 6,000 pounds of free marijuana to sick and dying patients over the past dozen years.
Wow, that's incredible. I just want to tell my viewers that the color that we have on Paul's face and body is actually a combination of lighting. Has nothing to do that he is not red and purple. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. Very nice complexion here. So Paul, I'm so excited to talk to you because I know that you have been in this industry for over 30 years. You started with the first media, I guess, hemp media back in when? In the 80s?
Yeah, I first went to a protest about a week after my 18th birthday in Washington, D.C., called the Washington Smoke-In. And then from 1981, I became the Washington State Director of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. So I was the Washington Normal Director from 81 to 84, and in 1984 I moved here to Oregon and started working on legalization. In fact, Jack Hare, another friend of mine, and I both moved here within a month of each other. I moved from Washington, he moved from California.
Wow, good old Jack.
In 1984.
In 1984. So when did you start Hemp News?
Hemp News, I started subscribing through CompuServe on a little Commodore 64 computer at about 600 to 900 baud. I remember it went to 1200 and then 2400. We get about, 30 to 60 characters a second, characters being letters.
Right.
It was before the advent of graphics and pictures and the graphical user interface or Windows. So it was all text driven. And I originally started posting hemp news to the Usenet news groups, are sometimes called bulletin boards.
Mm-hmm.
There are things out there called alt hemp and alt drugs, hemp, and other things, these Usenet news groups. So I had been, starting in 88, downloading all these marijuana stories from an executive news service in CompuServe. And I noticed no one else is seeing these. So once I started doing my hemp paper company in 1990, then I decided, I should put these news stories out there on these Usenet news groups to spread the word that we're starting to import hemp paper and sell hemp paper. And so that's what I did. I started posting it in 1991, and so it continues today. At the time, there were a few other online publications posting to Usenet news groups. When I started in 91, there weren't any websites yet. Websites didn't start till 1994.
Wow.
And so we switched over to the web in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
And because we started then, there's nothing else left. We're actually, as recognized by Wikipedia, the oldest online publication still in existence with Hemp News, which is a product of our Oregon Political Committee. It's called Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp, or CRRH.org. And so,
which is really important because in today's world, as we're going to fast forward now, so in today's world, marijuana is legal in how many states? 7?
7 now, right? It's
right?
not fully implemented in most of those states.
Right.
But in 4, it's fully implemented, and in Washington, D.C.
Right, so, and hemp, however, on the other hand, even though it's legal to eat it and wear it and drink it and import it, right? I don't know, we're just beginning to have a legalization for cultivation.
Yeah, it's experimental. Fields are allowed if they're licensed by their state agriculture department, usually through a university. Oregon was one of the first states to do that. Mm-hmm. Of course, they've been doing it as what's become a large industry in Canada. A friend of mine in Europe who started Cincy Seeds, Ben Dronkers, who started a hemp company called Hemp Flax that's still going strong. I saw him in Japan last year at the Kyoto Hemp Forum. We were both speakers there, and he said that he had lost $1 million a year on hemp flax until last year, and last year he made about $150,000.
Well,
so that's
good.
a step in the right direction.
Right.
If it wasn't for hemp, Cincy Seeds supporting that, he wouldn't have been able to do it though. But they making, the interior for Mercedes-Benz, the paneling for BMWs,
Nike
and all kinds of different
shoes,
things.
yeah.
Cigarette papers and currency papers. I think he said his first hemp sales was for cigarette papers in Turkey.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, so do you feel, because you've been now in the cannabis industry for 30 years, you feel now that we're moving forward as a country?
Yeah,
yes?
it's definitely moving forward as never before. I think starting to see some legalization is opening the doors, but I really think that's just a step. What we really need to do is be able to grow hemp without regard for its seed and its fiber, without regard to THC content. We should be judging hemp on its seed productivity and its fiber productivity. And when we do, I believe it will replace most of the world's petroleum, and that'll change the whole economic paradigm we all live up here. I think that's a key bellwether for the future of freedom for humanity. Because with the convergence of several different technologies, nanotechnology, genomic science, or DNA, and artificial intelligence, that if we don't expand natural individuals' rights to include freedom of consciousness, freedom of thought, then the dystopian possibilities are overwhelming. And so hemp is a bellwether issue for the future of freedom for all humanity.
A bellwether issue.
A bellwether issue, that if we can't free hemp and free it as a fuel source, because we can replace all the petroleum, that will wipe out global warming. We
But
can
isn't
replace,
that
and by doing that,
Sorry.
we'll wipe out world hunger with the residual seed protein after we press the seeds, and we'll wipe out deforestation with the fiber. So it's and we'll stop the centralization of economic and political control. Is instead of all of our money going to the Saudi princes and the OPEC despots, it will go to the farmers, who will spend it in their communities and naturally decentralize wealth. And that is our goal.
That should be all of our goals.
Yeah, I think
right?
so.
And wasn't that, though, in the beginning, that was kind of what wiped the whole thing out, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Was
the whole reason marijuana was prohibited was because the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches gave us this myth that marijuana is a dangerous kind. I can't say it more if you want me to. And
No, I'm saying it to my audience.
Yeah, in certain crowds, I'll change that last phrase from the fascist sons of the bitches to the crony capitalist ruling class. So you've got to know your audience for that. But it was actually propagated by a Kentucky attorney named Gatewood Galbraith, who passed away back about 5 years ago. Gatewood was a good friend of mine. He introduced me to Willie Nelson back in 1990. And drove his hemp-powered car across Kentucky.
Hemp-powered car?
Hemp-powered Mercedes-Benz with Willie and CNN and about 100 of us. And it was big news way back then.
So how is hemp biofuel coming along in this country?
It's slow because right now we don't allow high THC hemp. See, low THC hemp is just a subterfuge, and it's something they want to distract us from. People think that that's the solution for seed, protein, oil, and fiber, and it's not. Really, high THC cannabis produces twice as much fiber and 20 times more seed oil and protein. So as long as we're restricted to low THC hemp, we'll never really, while we do have a useful product in terms of the hemp protein and the hemp oil for health and food, and the hemp fiber for various products, it won't really be fully beneficial until we can grow the most productive varieties of hemp, and those are high THC varieties. And like I said, they make twice as much fiber and 20 times more seed oil, and the seed oil is the key. We need the seed, and we need it for health, and we need it for fuel. And when we can grow high THC cannabis for fuel again, that'll change that whole economic paradigm.
So let me ask you then, right now, low THC hemp couldn't be used for biofuel? So you're telling me that's kind of been sold a bill of goods?
You get about 600 pounds an acre with low THC hemp. See, low THC hemp limits the THC to less than 0.3%. They usually try to go for 0.2 or 0.2% THC or lower. And so that only produces about 600 pounds of seed per acre. The reason being is they bred out the THC. And where is most of the THC? It's in the flowers. So they've bred out most of the flowers with low THC hemp, you get one tiny scraggly flower up at the top.
Right.
Where high THC cannabis has big flowers and lots of THC. So high THC hemp makes 8 to 12,000 pounds of seeds per acre. So that's the difference. It's literally between 15 and 25 times more productive than the low THC hemp that only makes 600 pounds of seed. So where, even though it makes 600 pounds, it's still good food, it's still good oil, the fiber's still useful, but it's not economically competitive with other seed oil. The most productive seed oil crops are soybeans, canola, or rapeseed, and sunflower seeds. Each of those three make about 100 to 120 gallons of seed oil per acre. High THC cannabis makes 300 to 500 gallons of seed oil per acre.
And that can be used for things that, like, could it be used for?
Anything you make with petroleum, you can make with hemp.
Oh, so that's plastic and textiles and all
only
of...
it's non-toxic in comparison to petrochemicals,
yes.
which are poisoning our planet.
Right.
What I like to tell people is just imagine that Exxon Valdez wreck that happened about 25 years ago up in Alaska.
Right.
It poisoned the environment for generations. If that had been hemp seed, it would have enriched the environment. The
Right.
animals would have had food, and they wouldn't have had to do a massive cleanup. They'd have to have rescued some birds that were coated in oil, but it wouldn't have been a toxic coating.
Right.
And so
So what about the worry about everyone saying, well, if it's high THC, then you can't eat it. You can't eat it because then you'll get high on it.
the seeds don't have the THC, the flowers do.
Okay.
And so you just separate the seeds from the flowers.
So can you make the protein then out of that?
Yeah, certainly. The seeds whether you have low THC hemp seeds or high THC
Has
hemp
nothing to
seeds,
do.
has nothing to do. No THC in the seed.
Well,
So
well,
there's no THC in there. And there's this
need
irrational fear of THC. You know, it's a non-toxic, beneficial substance. On one hand, the federal government says it has no medicinal utility. On the other hand, the Department of Health and Human Services has a patent on cannabis
Correct.
for cancer and pain relief. So
Yeah.
there's this lie out there, and we're all victims of this lie. And some of us have paid the ultimate price. We've been
Really?
shot in our homes because the doors were kicked in a
Sorry.
no-knock raid. We are dying in prison, sentenced with life without the possibility of parole.
Right.
You know, in Malaysia, Indonesia, if you're caught with more than a few hundred grams of cannabis, they will hang you, and you will die the night you are found guilty. You'll be
My
dead the next
God.
morning. So families and lives have been destroyed based on this lie that marijuana is bad for you when it's really good for you.
So why do you think? Well, I know why. So
warm day
let's
here
say
or something, but-
beyond the money and the greed that they're making off of this lie, is there a bigger reason that they don't want us to expand our consciousness, possibly?
I think that's part of it, but I think it's mainly the money. The fact that it expands our consciousness and makes us less likely to believe lies and more likely to question
Right.
you know,
Authority.
fake news.
Yeah.
Then that has a lot to do with it as well. But it's really about money and power and the continued centralization of economic and political control. It's a battle between the synthetic, centralized despots of the world, those petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist, sons of bitches, and the natural cycle, the synthetic cycle versus the natural cycle,
Right.
and the farmers, and our health, and the future of life and freedom on this planet. And so that's what I look at it as.
So what can people do? I mean,
They
they
can
should
buy hemp
watch.
products.
Yes.
They can spread the truth and educate others.
Yes.
We can encourage the farming of hemp for fuel and not limit it to low THC cannabis. That's the thing that so many hemp people buy into, is that, and I bought into it and I propagated it for a while too, that hemp is completely separate species, that it won't ever get you high. Well, it's really the same species. It's cannabis sativa.
Right.
And so it's not a genus of different species, it's one species.
Right. Well, isn't it the cannabis plant, and then you have two strains? You have
There's-
marijuana,
exactly,
and
there's
then hemp. So
strains,
it's
they're
right.
varieties.
Yeah. So it's one cannabis plant. They're both
Yeah,
cannabis.
but they're just different varieties. Just like there are different varieties of people or Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
There are different varieties of cannabis, you know. because
Yes.
of evolution over periods of time.
Which
In
is-
fact, you know, hemp is the oldest agricultural crop. Not only is it the most productive crop, making more protein, fuel, fiber, it's also the oldest crop. It's been cultivated at least 12,000 years and maybe 25 or 35,000 years. We have co-evolved with cannabis. So today, the cannabis plant's seed oil perfectly matches humans' protein needs and the 8 essential amino acids.
Wow.
No other plant
That's
does
huge.
that. And the medicine from the flowers perfectly matches our endocannabinoid system. So we have evolved with this plant, and this plant has co-evolved with us. It's a symbiotic relationship. And together we're whole. And right now we're split apart. And we need to stop that. And it's only to the benefit of the few and at the expense of the many that marijuana prohibition was imposed. And I really believe hemp, marijuana is a bellwether issue for the future of freedom. If we don't fully liberate hemp from the shackles of this illogical, false prohibition, then the future of humanity is not as good as it would otherwise be.
It would remain a prison planet, and even then
Right.
some, because
Obviously,
then they'll
there's-
see
there's
these
people who plan that.
Right. These people aren't even standing up for themselves, which then would allow them to take everything to a much further level. So we can find you on Cannabis Common
Cannabis
weekly?
Common Sense is our weekly live television show. We also have our Hemp News newspaper. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/restorehemp. You can find us at facebook.com/dpaulstanford, or go to our website at crrh.org. Even though this Canadian oil company that's trying to steal my multi-million-dollar clinic business is now saying they own all of our websites, so we're fighting for our freedom of speech. It's really
I'm
odd
sorry.
that I've been educating people about the benefits of hemp to replace petroleum, and now I've had this Canadian-Israeli energy company, Adira Energy, that's ADIRA Energy.com. They have come in to try to take over everything I've done in my life.
Wow.
So I am being slapped down by these guys, but I will never surrender. You know, I started working for marijuana legalization back in 1978. We didn't start seeing it happen until 2012 and 2014. I will never give up. I will give
No, we
as long
need
as I
you.
can breathe.
Right.
I will be working for this change because I see it as essential for the future of future generations. Life on Earth.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. All right. All right. Well,
All right.
I want to ask you one more thing, because you have to be delighted with this. Are you not delighted now that it is legal? And,
Oh, of course.
And
I
thousands,
spent millions of
hundreds
dollars and worked for years to put marijuana legalization on the ballot. I personally gathered about 10,000 signatures
Nice.
from 1984 to 2014 to legalize marijuana. That meant I talked to 100,000 people. So I am more than delighted, but it's only a step. We still have to replace petroleum with hemp,
Yes, we do.
and that's the ultimate goal.
All right. We'll push for that. Together we'll grow.
Yes.
All right, put some